All right, folks, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you for joining me here. We're going to take a look at BakeryToken. It is an interesting price hike, significant difference in price over the last 24 hours. So it's intriguing me a lot. Of course, I want to check it out because one of my subscribers just told me that I need to reference this, and I think it's going to be quite exciting. So thank you for joining me here, of course. And as per usual, I'm not a financial advisor. Please do your own research. This is for educational purposes only. And just before we get started, I would recommend you check the links below. I do actually have a link in there for our Telegram community, so you can go ahead and get involved with our community. Everyone there is fantastic. And of course, if you'd like $25 in Bitcoin, feel free to reference the link for Voyager. Let's go ahead and get to it. All right, folks, let's go ahead and take a look at the technicals for Bake. And what we're going to do first is get quick perspective on what's going on in the market right now, of course, what's happening with the 15-minute chart. That's my favorite chart. And then we'll switch over to the actual, to the Bitcoin to kind of confirm and see if there's any correlation. I like to always understand that to see how they influence each other. And then furthermore, dive deeper into the one-day chart, the 4-hour chart, and then the 15-minute. And possibly even smaller, we might even look at the 1 or 5-minute chart depending on the price action. Just so we can find a good entry point for y'all and to ensure that you make an informed decision, right? That's the whole point of this. So let's go ahead and take a look. First things first, we've got the 15-minute chart pulled up here. And what was it earlier today, approximately 5:30 a.m. Pacific, we had a price increase from $1.43 initially up to about $2.38, slight sell-off, and then back up to a high at the time of $2.65. And we see some consolidation, and then of course it peaks at its previous resistance at $2.65, sells off, and jumps up again. So it's quite interesting. Very good movement here, though it's nice to see that it did pass that resistance level. It is making consistent higher highs. And if we look back here a ways too, we can see quite a lot of data, of course, here. Let's let's look at Bitcoin first. But let's get let's pull it up through the 17th. There we go. All right, so let's look at Bitcoin. And we can see the 17th there. That's kind of a baseline I like to look at because obviously we all know what happened there. That was D-Day recently, the day which we all lost a good 15% of our overall portfolio, if not more, because you could see that Bitcoin dropped from a good 61,000 down to roughly 51,000 as a low in a matter of what? That was 4 to 8 hours, somewhere crazy like that. Not great, but it does happen with Bitcoin sometimes, so just know it's normal. It's not a big deal. Obviously, it can recover, which it has so far. So you see here, consolidation pattern for Bitcoin with a strong support at the time of 53,000. Lost support. We stayed under there for a few days, and then we had our most recent sell-off to hit the not the all-time low, but the lowest low in the past 3 or 4 months for Bitcoin of 47,000. Okay, it's since ramped back up, and what's nice too to note is there is a strong resistance level that was broken, and that is now a support level at, again, right around 53,300 plus or minus. Another thing to note too before we move on, and I want to show you this here because the 4-hour chart tells us where we're at. We did pass the 50-day moving average recently, which is great. So just know the next milestone here would be the 100-day moving average and the 200-day moving average, which are both hovering approximately 56 to 57,000. So if the price action continues the way that it has so far with Bitcoin, we're going to see an increase, or it will at least test those levels to see if it comes above, because historically the 200-day moving average has been the most impactful for Bitcoin. Okay, so pay attention to this. This may not impact Bake, we'll look at that here in a moment, but it does play a factor, and it will impact the majority of all of your other holdings if you are into altcoins and essentially anything other than Bitcoin, right? You probably are, considering the fact that you're watching this video, safe to say, right? Okay, anyway, so we established that, so I just want to show you there as a baseline. And then if we look at Bake, let's look at the 17th. So 17th, let's go back a little further so we can see the right scaling. So the 17th, here it is. That's the sell-off for Bitcoin on the 17th. So it went from roughly $1.65 to $1.34, and then a little bit more selling off the following day. So at the time, the lowest it hit was about $1.23. Then we had our other sell-off here too recently on the 25th, and that one was only impacted by roughly 20 cents. So I would venture to guess and to say here that Bake does not, it's not greatly impacted by Bitcoin. In other words, yes, we had a sell-off and a period of consolidation, but it did ramp back up to the original price and then kind of found its true price there, and Bitcoin sold off again. So I would say that yes, it is impacted, but not as large and as vast as others. So that's kind of just something good to know, just as a sentiment to understand. And obviously, there's a catalyst here to cause this to increase. Now, I didn't look at the fundamental data here because this was just brought to my attention here recently by some of my subscribers, but I can tell you that based on what we see here right now, there is obviously something that pushed the price up significantly at this point. I'd love to find out what that is perhaps later, but needless to say at this point, with just the technical data here, let's go ahead and focus on that for now. So let's go ahead and take a bird's eye view, look at the big picture first and work our way down. Now with Bake here, something to note, of course, the price is always a little elevated when it first hits the market, and this is the one I'm using here, this is Binance. So at this point, again, I didn't do any research, but I would speculate on the 18th, that was the first day that it was introduced to the Binance market. And then of course a strong sell-off. You see this happen all the time. So we can't really use that as a barometer, but what we can use as kind of an understanding of how successful Bake has been is right here, where we see on the 11th, which was actually a very good trading day for a lot of people because Bitcoin was hitting its peak. You can see right here on the 11th, it hit 226 as a high. Okay, so that was a previous resistance level. It broke through that with no trouble in the last 24 to 48 hours. And it has new all-time high of about $2.90. Now, looking at also other indicators here, what else do you see that might be perhaps not ideal? A non-ideal indicator here for me, of course, is a relative strength index. Again, it doesn't have a lot of weight in the one-day chart, but it does tell you the overall momentum is extremely overbought right now. So again, just something to be aware of. The overall market for this is essentially overbought. So just be prepared for the fact that it could sell off in the near future, and to perhaps consider taking a little bit off the top. I always recommend 10 to 20%, just trimming a little bit off the top so you can take profits while you still can, because if it does reverse on you, you still at least have a little bit of money on the side. And then ideally, when it reverses and comes down and finds this new, hits the new support level, you can reinvest and it comes back up. That's a conversation for another day, but that is kind of the general concept, right? So that's the one-day chart. Also note, MACD is overextended. Big surprise with the price increase the way it is. Again, these two things aren't really all that important right here. 4-hour chart, however, which I'm going to switch over to now, which is where we're at. This is where I feel like we have the most validity for RSI, MACD, and those things there. They carry the most weight. In my experience over the years, I've noticed that they just tend to work better on the 4-hour chart. So looking at this, what also do we see? It's essentially the same song and dance, right? Not much difference from the one-day chart. Obviously, we got 4-hour bars instead of one-day bars, but if you look down below, the MACD also overextended. RSI, extremely overbought. Now, these are normal in situations like this, so again, not a big deal. You could still find a good entry and can still make more on this if the price continues to increase. But to me, as a conservative trader, I would say that these are just some warning signs you want to pay attention to going into shorter time frames, so you know more specifically, the overall consensus instead of just what's happening right now. Now we know that it's extremely overpriced and overbought, right? So it's not bad. It's just something to know going into a smaller time frame, because when the price goes up like this, you do not want to take entry when it's making higher highs, and it looks like it's testing it right now, and it might even be exceeding that. But anytime there's extreme volume and movement like this here, you want to be cautious on your entry and wait for a good, all the right indicators. And I'll show you that here in a moment. So let's look at the 15-minute chart. So the 15-minute chart, let's see what's going on. All right, so we are at a new high right now. It just broke the previous resistance level of 290, and it's testing 296 right now. 297, Come on, can we get 298? All right. Anyways, looking at these numbers here, though, let's just quickly get a baseline of what we see here. All right. Now, even though it's not extremely important, the RSI on the smaller time frames, it still gives you an idea of roughly what the overall sentiment is. And this, even though it's not extremely high, it's over 70. And to me, it's not a good indication of a buy signal. So again, I'm a little more conservative. I wouldn't recommend waiting until we see some type of consistency here. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Now, quickly to note, let's look at this first. There are a few indicators here, the ones that I use the most, that are most my most favorites: 50-day, 100-day, and 200-day moving average. And just note that the smaller time frames you go, so if you go down to a 1-minute chart, those are not going to be accurate much at all, right? You need to have somewhere in the range of just say a 10 or a 20-day moving average instead of 50, 100, 200. Now I say that because if we look at a smaller time frame, which we have to find a good entry, we're going to want to switch these out and use different ones. But more importantly at this point, just to note, these haven't caught up yet on the 15-minute chart. So until they do, I would not take entry, because I only feel comfortable taking entry after the support levels have been tested. Speaking of support, I forgot to note this here. Let's look and add a resistance or support line, right? So what do you see here that's kind of consistent? I always see 4, almost 5 tests at the $2.64 range. So let's go ahead and draw a line there. That is our new support, but it was a previous resistance tested 4 times. So again, the more often a line is tested, the more consistent it will have the likelihood of being broken, right? But it also creates itself as a stronger support and resistance level after that's happened. So since that's been broken, now that we have those 4 bars that had tested that line and it broke through there, this basically creates it as a much stronger support level because it was tested more times than just once or twice. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And looking at, see here, so we got that, we've got, so 264 is support. So just looking at the numbers here, where they are right now, if I were to consider taking entry, I would do 2 things. I'd wait for the price to calm down a little bit and to potentially test the support level of 264. The reason why I'd wait is because I don't really like taking entry on circumstances like this where the price is elevated so much higher than the volume weighted average price, the VWAP, that's that blue line. When the price is that far overextended, there's a likelihood of it hitting a max and coming back down. And I'll show you this too, because I used this as a reference in my previous video. This is just a traditional stock. This is Thinkorswim. This is a different platform for stocks, essentially ETFs, that I also do on the side. But these pink lines here, if you see these pink lines, these are the volume weighted average price highs and lows. Because there's a point in which, if you can see here, look at that, where the line hit it, but it bounces back and rejects. That's that variance I'm referring to. So if we see a variance here, in this circumstance, with it being this high above the VWAP, then there's a very strong likelihood it's going to get rejected and come back down. Unfortunately, Binance and pretty much any other trading view itself, the volume weighted average price doesn't include the highs and the lows, so it's only the middle line there, which is okay. It's less noise, but it's not as helpful. So if you hear me say there's a significantly large variance, that's what I'm referring to. So to me, this variance is too high, too great to want to take entry. Now, obviously, we want to look at a shorter time frame to identify that, because this isn't the only thing you use. But based on this information alone, I would wait for the price to calm down and to potentially test the support level here before I took entry. And if I did take entry, just say, for example, it comes down and hits that line, what I would do is I would add maybe about 25 to 30% of my position. If you're new to the channel, you'll learn that I don't take large positions. I like to take small positions and add to them. I like to average up as I get closer to my goal. So I would recommend doing something of that nature if the price were to come down and bounce off this line. So let's go ahead and take a look at the 1-minute chart. Okay, so we'll just turn off these moving averages for now. And as you can see here, this is the support line right here, 264. So significantly higher. If we take a look here closer, look at that. Keeps on going. So, in all reality, when the price is doing this right here, in some cases it can be best to not wait for all the indicators and to get in. Again, it's risky. I don't prefer that. I'm risk averse, so I'll never do that personally. I would have probably looked at the 1 minute chart here and considered getting in somewhere along here, because it's created 1, 2, 3, 4. It's tested this line here about 5 or 6 times. So like $2.70 could be a decent support level to rely on. And had that happen, and you see these two green 1 minute bars, as soon as those two 1 minute green bars closed, could have taken entry somewhere around here. But again, you never truly know with the price action being as high as it is right now. I personally would rather just avoid it altogether and wait for the price to come down, because in most cases it does usually come back down, as it's kind of doing right now. Again, we don't know, but to be on the safe side, always wait for confirmation. That's something I always preach in every one of my videos. I'm probably a broken record to a lot of you. And again, confirmation is just waiting for the line, whatever line that is, a support or resistance line. It could be the VWAP, to be tested multiple times. And I feel the most comfortable with a 15 to 30 minute time frame. Now, when the price is doing what it's doing right now, you don't have that amount of time to wait. So sometimes maybe taking a small position might be advantageous to consider. But just do me a favor, do yourself a favor, do not go all in. Don't just go willy-nilly and think that you're going to catch the wave here. Yes, that might work for you once in a while, but it's not going to work for the most part. It hasn't for me, and I've been burned so many times in the past, which is why I try to practice what I preach, because the fact that these things it's tried and true. It's worked for me over the years, and I can tell you that I've gotten better as a trader by being more patient, which is why I kind of set a rule of 15 to 30 minutes, because if you don't have that time frame, you're not going to be able to have that moment to understand that, okay, it is actually shifting this direction, or it's holding. Like, it can go pretty much anywhere it would like. So I guess long story short here, just to kind of cut to the chase, if you're going to take entry, just be careful, wait for confirmation, find good entry points. And in this sense here, to me, a good entry point would be to wait for this to be tested, or if nothing else, the 270. Wait for the $2.70 line to be tested and see what happens there. I have a sneaking suspicion that it's going to come down and test this again, and if it does, and it stays above for just say no less than, if you're using the 1 minute chart, no less than 5 to 10 minutes, then that would maybe be a good entry point to consider. But you always want to see how the price action is reacting to the support and resistance levels that are created. And you don't just grab the support and resistance levels out of nowhere. They're ones that have been tested stronger. That's why I use a 15-minute chart to usually try to identify support and resistance levels, because the bigger the time frame, the more accurate the support and resistance level typically are. So again, just something to consider. Where this is going to go, I don't know. I hope it continues to go up for whomever is invested right now. And just make sure you be careful. You wait for the price to continue, and make sure you get some type of confirmation before you get in. And for the love of whichever God that you believe in, make sure that you do not go all in. Take a 25 to 30% position, see where it goes, and before you even do that, set a goal, set a target. I want to make 3% on this return. So mark the 3% line on your chart and make sure you work towards that. If you get closer to it, maybe add to your position. If you got the momentum, everything else is working well. If you don't set a goal, you can really just jeopardize all of your earnings because you just kind of randomly jumping in, randomly jumping out. I'd much rather see you have a 1% gain every single day than a 4% loss today and a 5% gain tomorrow. It weighs heavy on the heart when you have to, sustain such losses and so much pain and agony, anguish, whatever you want to call it. Just like what we experienced on the 17th, right, when Bitcoin took a massive dump. That hurt a lot of people. And it was likely the people that had all in and had nothing else to invest because the prices came down. They had to wait for the price to come back up to be able to sell, instead of having some money set aside in USD or whatever currency you have available, and you can reinvest at that time. So take it from me, if you're invested in this right now, consider trimming off the top, take 10 to 20%, and put that on the side until the price calms down and comes back closer to a support level. And you can reinvest if you feel comfortable enough, all the indicators are there, before it goes back up again. Again, I make it sound easy. This doesn't always work out that way. This isn't rocket science, but it does. These are increasing your odds here, right? This is not gambling. This is just educated understanding of how the markets work. So use these to your advantage. Anyways, thank you for listening to me and listening to me ramble. I appreciate that as well, of course. If you find benefit, please like and subscribe. Join our Telegram community, and let's be sure to stay engaged and communicate and just stay open, and let's all learn and grow together, right? That's the whole purpose. So thanks again for watching this far if you did. Hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you in the next video.